Hello my sardines and anchovies. Today we're talking about one of the greatest cars to ever race on Mount Panorama, the Holden Torana A9X. This video will be split into sections and you can skip to whichever one you like with the timestamps in the description below. Without further ado, let's get into it. It's 1967 and Holden has just released the first Torana. Now instantly forget about that because the HB Torana was essentially a rebadged 1966 Vauxhall Viva and the Torana would remain entirely uninteresting until late 1969 with the release of the LC generation. The LC was the first Torana to find meaningful success on Australian circuits with its high performance compared to other cars like the Valiant Pacer and Ford Escort, and the car would go on to have a larger adoption from more competitive drivers such as Norm Beatty and Bob Jane. Yes, that one. Whilst it wouldn't win at Bathurst, it would place well at several events like taking fourth at the Hardie-Ferodo 500, and the production of the LC continued until 1972 when the LJ was unveiled. The LJ was a larger success on track than the LC and eventually won at Bathurst under the command of God amongst men Peter Brock. He would drive his LJ XU1 GTR to victory in the 1972 Hardie-Ferodo 500 and would use the car again in several other races, but the LJ would never take first at Bathurst again. We now arrive at the LH, and this is where we begin to see the A9X take shape. A special trim of the LH was often named the L34, and this would see minor racing success in 1975, but during 1976 it was a prominent and dominant car. Holden would finally bless us with the base of the A9X in 1976 with the LX, and this is where the fun really begins. The Holden dealer team would begin racing the A9X in 1978, and the car would place first at several events in the season, including the races at Symonds Plains, Oran Park, and Sandown to name a few. In both the 1978 and 79 seasons, it would compete against notable cars like the XC Falcon, the Mazda RX-3, and two Alfa Romeo 2000 GTVs. Nice. It famously finished 6 laps ahead of the competition in the 1979 Hardie-Ferodo 1000 race at Mount Panorama, whilst also setting the fastest lap on track at the time with a time of 2 minutes and 21.1 seconds, also allegedly with no oil in the engine. Is this true? Maybe. Does anyone care? No. Part of this success was due to the A9X's massive 308 cubic inch V8, which in simple terms was an absolute unit, producing 395 brake horsepower and roughly 380 pound-foot of torque. For context, that's about the same performance in the LS2 used by the Corvette C6. The engine had been modified from the old L34s with new parts installed like better intake manifolds, more reliable Iskanderian valves, and twin Weber carburetors. It could safely hit 6,800 RPM, making it extremely competitive, though Neil Burns, one of the main engine designers, would state that it was mostly Brock's driving that made it work so well. The car looked the part too, with a clean yet boxy shape betrayed only by 4 chunky fender flares, a cowl induction hood, and a small lip spoiler adorning its rear. And damn, some of those liveries for this thing were absolutely outstanding. I especially like Bob Morris's one and Brock's ever-gorgeous Marlboro No. 5. Curiously, the car wasn't used by the semi-official Holden dealer team in the 1980 ATCC season and was only raced by the smaller, less competitive teams on the grid. Numerous theories exist on why Holden pulled it from the racetracks, the most popular being that the car was damaging the sport by being too good. This is quite evidently not true, and the real reason is most likely that Holden stopped production of the Torana in 1980 and wanted to stop racing something they didn't sell. Whatever the reason is, it's certain that they capped the model off with quite a bang. So now it's 1980 and the Torana is no more, so Holden begins racing the newer VB and VC Commodores. This proved fruitful at first, with Peter Brock placing highest overall in the 1980 ATCC Championship and Holden's placing top 5 for the next couple years, but never achieving the major success of the A9X. The field slowly evolved with fewer Australian cars replaced with American, European and Japanese vehicles. Brock himself would go on to drive for other teams starting in 1988 with the Mobil Racing M3. Now let's skip over 30 years of slowly declining sales to the end of 2020, where on a rather somber note, Holden dies, simultaneously killing off the already minuscule Australian motor industry, just like what the British did with theirs. So, I hope you enjoyed the video, and even better learned something about one of, if not the most legendary car to ever grace Australian racetracks, the A9X. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.